Hello, everybody. I hope you're well. Thank you very much for taking the time to join today. Obviously today we're going to talk a little bit about the Copperworks and the rental market and general update on completions and things like that. What I would encourage you to do is on the left-hand side of your screen, you should see a Q&A button. So if you have specific questions, please do feel free to write them in there, and then we will attempt to to answer everything. I don't think this will be a particularly long session, half an hour maximum, really, and hopefully you'll find it useful and get a clearer picture on A, where the Copperworks is, and B, obviously what the rental market and everything else is doing. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Richard Bradstock. I'm the Managing Director here at RPA, and I'm joined today by Phil. Hi, Phil. How are you doing?
Well, thank you. Good to meet you all.
And Phil is the founder and principal at Brick Management and Lettings, who are our preferred property provider. So, without further ado, just to make you feel good, Phil, there's a big photo of you up on the screen. But perhaps you could just give us a little bit of an intro to yourself before we move on to the next part.
Certainly. Thank you for the intro there, Richard. Yeah, I suppose in short, I'm the founded Brick Management and Lettings, I suppose, on the back end of 20 years or so of property experience, having previously started in the property sector in the sort of high street estate agency. I felt there was a need for portfolio sort of management for developers and residential investors. Again, in regards to, I suppose, my feedback, having dealt with many overseas investors previously, I understand that any investment asset is as good as obviously the way it's looked after, and I felt that certainly I could add value to that sector, and that was the sort of the groundworks, I suppose, of the starting of Brick Management.
Absolutely, and I know several of you have on this call today have actually already spoken to Phil. Following this, unless you sort of tell us otherwise, what we will. We'll look to arrange a call between Phil and yourselves with a view to the services that he can provide, and with specific reference to the unit that you have bought within the Copperworks. So, but let's move on in terms of construction update. So. We will share this afterwards, and there will actually be a formal Copperworks update coming out shortly anyway with all this information. So please don't necessarily strain to read this now, because we'll be sharing this with you. But the long and the short of it is that thanks to mainly thanks to it's mainly the windows that have been causing things to slow down just because of supply chain issues. We were hoping, obviously, the original construction completion was expected to be this month for most of the buildings. That has now, as most of you will hopefully already be aware, has now pushed back to April, or in the case of Building 6 to May. And this is, unfortunately, this is what it is. I know a lot of you are already doing your mortgage applications and so on and so forth. What we will be doing is reaching out to you individually around those, just to see whether we can help with that process at all, and provide any clarity that we need to. Just to give you, but sort of, I suppose, to and Phil, please chime in here. I mean, you've been to the site more recently than I have, but I think I just wanted to show everybody some photos of this. This is Building 5, the before and after shot of Building 5, which is the first building to hand over. This was mainly large 2-beds, and albeit there is a couple of sort of large 1-beds in there as well. And that's actually handing over, the first units hand over today. In fact, I think most of the units hand over today. what you will see to the right of this, now this photo is about, I mean, I think it's about sort of 7 or 8 weeks old, but to the right of this, you will see building 3 for anybody that has bought a unit within that. But I think what's, you know, and Phil, I know you were impressed when you went to the site. It looks pretty good, right?
It does, and I mean, obviously, as a site, every time I go down, it's marked progress every time.
Yeah.
As you say.
It's the I mean, obviously, building 5 was one of the. It's obviously a mixture of the Copperworks of sort of actually listed buildings and sort of new build buildings built in.
No, isn't it? Yeah, and the other thing, I mean, obviously, having seen many different sites over the years, you know, one thing it strikes is how well presented and clean the development is as well in regards to the construction. It's a really lovely site.
Good. I didn't know construction could be clean.
Yeah, it is with the rate we've had recently.
Yeah, true. And then this is the show flat. Again, some of you may have already seen this, but again, you know, the finishing really is excellent. I've had several people feed this back to me, and you know, this actually remains the only unsold unit in Building 5, because if you remember, a large number of the units have been held back for owner-occupier, people looking to buy to move into, which is all now, you know, happening in a big way, given that completion is imminent, and so this is the unit that everybody is being shown to have a look around. Some other sites as well, some wider sites, wider images. So that's Building 5 again, a slightly more updated photo, and then a wider site photo, as you can see there, which is Building 2 on the left here. So this is, again, you know, progress is being made, and the assuming a period, assuming not that we don't have any really inclement weather, this, you know, those completion dates are, you know, are expected to be hit. We will come back to questions, of course, around this if people have them. But what? Can you? Sorry, Phil. Can you still see the presentation?
The Birmingham property market overview page.
Yeah, for some reason, there it is. Got it. Sorry about that. But I think as well, before we go into the services that in detail that Phil provides, I think it's just worth, a lot of the people on this call possibly haven't spoken to someone from RPA about this site for the last possibly even year or so, other than sort of getting some updates. So worth just giving an update, I think, on the market. And it's fair to say, Phil, that it's flying, right? The market has moved on in a big way. Yeah,
very much so. Very much so. I mean, obviously, over the last couple of years with COVID and everything else, it was obviously sort of in different times, but certainly what we're noticing over the last sort of 12 months or so, and certainly now, is, you know, that return back into the city centre, back into the offices, and you know, Birmingham City itself has had an influx of corporate clients that have come in, and as we can see there, obviously HMRC have recently obviously announced a relocation, but you know, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, again HSBC, all very, very big employers in the area, quality, high earning employees.
I think also, I mean, we're obviously here to talk about rent specifically, but just from my side, you know, it's been very interesting to see the journey from a sort of asset value perspective, in that we are, you know, we're currently working on by the same developer, King's Crescent Homes, the site next door, Scholars Quarter, which is approximately 7% up in terms of average per square foot values, and is selling really well. There's 2 or 3 other sites in the Jewellery Quarter, all of which are significantly more expensive, all of which are, you know, on the market and moving. So I think, you know, it was, for those of you that bought, you know, in more uncertain times a year ago and all the rest of it, I mean, I think the proof hopefully is in the pudding, in that, you know, you've very much done the right thing. You know, it's a hell of a site, and actually, you know, it's what's happened in the Jewellery Quarter over the last year, 18 months, has just, there was always a scarcity of product within the Jewellery Quarter, and I know, Phil, from a rental perspective, that's particularly the case.
Yeah.
And that kind of scarcity of product has really just been exaggerated in the last 18 months, which has meant that, as we'll come on to, you know, we're hoping that the sort of the rental yields that we actually achieve for you will be slightly increased from what we actually originally predicted, and that's just based around real numbers that we're seeing in, you know, other developments and in less good parts of town often as well.
Yeah, most certainly. And as I say, and again, for the appetite, certainly, I can't see that changing any time soon, actually.
No. Well, the Jewellery Quarter, of course, being a conservation area and being restricted on height and effectively, therefore, density of what people can build, it just means that, and given how trendy and fashionable it is, it does simply mean that, you know, that there should, you know, the movement should be positive, right? Very much so. Phil, do you want to tell me when you want me to move on slide-wise? But perhaps you could take over here to talk a little bit about the rental market, particularly.
I mean, as we sort of touched on there, I mean, the rental market over the recent years has proved incredibly strong, certainly through the COVID periods. Driven, I suppose, by two factors, really. One, as Richard touched on, is the scarcity of actual product. Over COVID, obviously, new developments have slowed down, so there is lesser new stock coming to the market. And also, I suppose, you know, again, in regards to you know, people's living as well, you know, they want their own space rather than, you know, maybe multi-dwelling living. They're wanting their own apartment, etc. We've seen, you know, right across the board nationwide, you know, the rental market's strong. Obviously, you can see in the slide in front, actually, the prediction by JLL over the next 5 years is for a further 14% growth in the rental figures. And, you know, I think for Birmingham itself, it's predicted to be obviously one of the more strongest performing UK cities, and certainly for ourselves, you know, we're finding, you know, we can't really get enough stock. You know, there's a very strong demand of for rental accommodation with quality tenants. You'll see, obviously, for sort of as a general sort of tenant profile for the Jewellery Quarter, I think it's probably worth noting that, you know, as Richard touched on, you know, there is other new build developments in Birmingham completing currently, and they're achieving very good rentals. And arguably, the JQ Quarter is most certainly a much more desirable location. And in regards to sort of, I suppose, sort of demand, it's worth noting, as you can see there, obviously, you know, general sort of overview for the West Midlands compared to the actual specific Jewellery Quarter. You can see that just under 70% of residents in that area, it's a young, vibrant area below the age of 30. In fact,
I mean that's quite an interesting thing, because and it changed what we always thought, but with the HSBCs and Goldman Sachs, you know, we do expect the tenants to be the sort of young professionals, right?
Yeah, 100%, and that's the interest we're seeing. I mean, again, you know, obviously 90% of the tenants are under the age of 40, so it's exactly that young professional market that we'll be looking to take up rentals in those properties. Again,
we seem to have some formatting issues here, so apologies for that, but I'll let you talk about it.
No worries. I mean, for, I suppose, the location, what makes the Jewellery Quarter so special, in my opinion, is its location to the city centre. Again, obviously, being the younger professionals, it's becoming more and more common for tenants not necessarily to have vehicles. And the Jewellery Quarter almost supports that, in regards to over a third of the residents actually will commute to work by foot. They walk into the city centre, which again is, you know, is a fantastic, I suppose, sort of USP really for the Copperworks and its locality. Yeah, and you know, again, for Jewellery Quarter, as Richard's touched on, again, that demand is always going to be strong because there's limited build, I suppose, because of the height of buildings and such like, because of being the planning restrictions. So the apartment, the rental market is very much apartment, and as you can see there, over 98% of apartments let, or properties let within that area within the last 12 months have been flats. Reinforced, I suppose, by the fact that it is that young professional market.
Absolutely. So I think I know there's a couple of questions coming in, and yes, Sugu, yeah, we'll definitely be sharing the slides, and Ewan, I'll come back to your question in a second with regard to the valuations and mortgages. So please do keep asking questions. We will get through them all. But Phil, perhaps now you could talk us through, more specifically about Brick and the services that you offer.
Yeah, certainly. So Brick Management and Lettings, we are a specialist letting and management business. Again, in regards to ourselves, I've touched on, we do full management service for retained developer stock, as well as investors predominantly overseas through the Middle East and Asia. We manage hundreds of properties and growing strongly all the time. And I suppose, here, myself and the team, our core values really is to sort of maximise return for investors, maintain the occupancy within the apartments, obviously provide transparent and efficient management, and ultimately, of course, ensuring that all clients are happy, whether that be landlords and tenants. As I mentioned, for us, we offer a full managed service. So again, I put down there just a little bit of, I suppose, sort of the structure. So that's the initial discussions in regards to what the rental should be on the market, what the market's doing, etc. Maybe as a landlord, you might have certain requirements or preferences for a tenant. We would obviously administer all quality marketing materials. So again, we do brochures on the individual apartments, professional photography, etc., etc. Here in the UK, obviously, the main type of advertising, social media, as well as property portals. So we advertise all the apartments on the likes of Zoopla and Rightmove. For us, we offer a service nationwide. So actually, it's a member of my team that will always conduct the viewing. So we facilitate all viewings, which is something which is quite a USP. We don't sort of outsource that at all. All viewings get done by a member of the Brick.
I think that's quite important, actually, from my side. I mean, because as soon as you start outsourcing and people are less motivated, it just means we can blame you, Phil, if there's no tenant, right?
yeah, exactly. Sort of, we're fully accountable, I suppose. But also importantly, it's all good and well, everyone looks great on paper, but actually once you physically go and see the tenants, show them the properties, you can't beat actually physically doing the viewings yourself, and ultimately grading the quality of tenant that we want to put in our developments.
Absolutely.
Obviously, when we successfully find a tenant for ourselves, as an agent, we would put the offer forward to you as the landlord. So it's not a case of we found you one, you've got to take it. We would explain, we have a professional couple, we have a single professional, or whatever it may be, and make sure that you're happy to proceed, A, with that tenant we've sourced, and B, obviously with the rental that we've achieved. Once we're in a point of agreement, we then actually actively get going with the referencing. So we do very comprehensive referencing, as you would like to think, in regards to accommodation, employment, credit referencing, etc., and provide all the sort of right to rent UK checks that we need to do here, just to ensure, obviously, that the people that we are housing have got the permissions to be in the UK, firstly, but also more importantly that they've got the quality behind them as well.
Absolutely. Something I think that is, I know that you're very keen on, and certainly, I think it's certainly worth considering, and particularly given what we've been through with COVID and so on, and there's a slight bit of volatility in the, sometimes in the letting market. But with that in mind, I mean, perhaps you could talk a little bit about this, Phil.
I mean, obviously, for, as you say, peace of mind. I mean, we were very fortunate in regards to actually the rental protection and legal expense policy that we provide was actually one of the only products on the marketplace that actually covered for the COVID pandemic. Yeah. So in short, in the eventuality, yes, we reference the tenants thoroughly and we can ensure quality, but there's a few eventualities you can't foresee, like marital splits, redundancy, etc. In short, there is a policy in place that covers that. So if you're sort of guaranteeing as such the rental payment, so you ensure that for 15 months, obviously you can get your full rental payment made for it, whilst we actively get the tenant out of the property. And it also covers the sort of legal costs, I suppose, in order to proceed to reclaim the property back from you, from the tenant.
How much does that? How much does it cost?
It's an annual policy, which is £300, and it's on the property for a year. So let's say, for example, should you have a tenant that moves out mid part of the year, any new tenant comes in still jumps in on the same policy. Very similar to like car insurance, as on an annual basis based on the property.
Right. Understood. Got it.
The criteria, of course, is we need to make sure that the tenants pass all the referencing, which is something that we obviously strive and would only recommend.
Absolutely. So I think, and actually just on that, I'm just aware that one of the crucial bits of information that I don't think we've got in here is the cost. So I don't quite know how I missed that out. So apologies, but I mean, again, if you could just explain, Phil. I mean, we're talking here. So that £300 would be, or would effectively be on top of the 10% plus VAT full management charge, right? So perhaps you could. So it's these services that you are as a landlord.
Yeah. So as you sort of top right on the bullets there, I mean, you'll see that we collect and basically remit the rental to the landlord on a monthly basis. How we work is obviously for our comprehensive full management service, it's 10% of the rent. Yeah. We take that each month and then forward the remainder to the landlord. And that 10% actually covers the full criteria. So again, just very quickly, it goes through and explains the property inspections. We will do sort of every 4 months, do a property inspections, issue a report to you, key service, maintenance, management. if there's any snagging or anything like that, again, that all is incorporated, all within the full managed service.
And I think obviously. For myself as a landlord myself with property in the UK, but also with doing the job I do is running a business that obviously that sells property. This is almost as much it's as important as anything else within the entire process. So, and it's very important to stress that this is it is a hands-off service. I mean, ultimately, what you are paying Phil for here is, for that peace of mind that you can go about your day-to-day life, whether you be in the Middle East or Switzerland or South Africa or wherever you might be, and knowing that everything is looked after, and that knowing that you're not going to get a call in the middle of the night from a tenant wanting something. That ultimately that is all managed by you, right? Isn't it, Phil?
I'm the one with the sleepless nights.
We'll again, there's a few questions I've just noticed that have come in, so we'll go through those in a sec. But worth noting that in terms of next steps, if you haven't already spoken to Phil, I know a few of you already have. If you haven't already spoken to Phil, we do suggest that that we get a call in the diary with Phil ASAP. Obviously, clearly with completion coming up in end of April or May for most of the buildings, it is important that Phil is in place and ready and can effectively start lining up potential tenants prior to actually even handover. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about the offer as well, Phil.
I think as you say, with the completion sort of forthcoming, our plan of of action with the lettings and the management of the units themselves is actually sort of a month, 6 weeks prior to you having your sort of keys handed to you as such. We would be looking to do the marketing on the block, getting access in there, getting a bank of quality tenants lined up. And again, in regards to, obviously already our network, we have a number of corporate clients as well that are already showing interest in the units. So it's very encouraging. For I suppose the services that we offer on that point is, for all landlords that sign up, obviously for our terms of business prior to completion, we offer a free of charge property handover and snagging service. So again, for my team, we would go down there and ensure, obviously, that we would go around the property and endeavour to make sure that all the finish is exactly how you would want it in your own properties, or how I'd want it in my properties, because of course it's important for us to ensure that it's in good position from day one, because of course it comes down to the letting and management to us. So it's important that we ensure that we have a top quality product offered to us.
Absolutely. I think something else, actually, the question that's just come up, which is very topical, and which we will be sharing information to you. So Grace has asked whether it's better furnished or unfurnished. I believe that our general advice, our standard advice would be that it's pretty important to furnish it, and the reason for that is twofold. It's, first of all, you will have tenants, as per the tenant profile you saw earlier, they're unlikely to be 25, 30 years old. And I know I, for one, didn't have any furniture when I was that old. So it's you will get a tenant faster because a lot of people that age want a kind of a ready solution. They just want to be able to move in. In terms of the furniture pack and so on, we will be sharing this with you all afterwards. The cost approximately on a 1-bed is £5,000. For a 2-bed, it's about £6,000. I apologize, it's not ready to actually show you here and now, but we will have it over to you in the next couple of days, and we'll then be in touch as to whether that's something you want to move forward with. Another question, Phil, that I think again would be good to answer now is, in terms of standard rental periods, what would you expect for the Copperworks? How long are the tenancies likely to be?
I mean, for generally speaking, obviously, I suppose again back to the tenant profile, typically speaking, we will always look for a minimum of 12-month term. In reality, obviously, after 12 months is up, it's very common, of course, for tenants to wish to stay in situ and again do a renewal period. At that point, we tend to be negotiating with the tenants. A lot of the tenants, like the security, they might be allowed another 12 months. But you may find that they might wish to have it at 6 or have it go periodic thereafter, where they can give 2 months' notice. As a general rule of thumb, the average length of tenancy is just shy of 2 years.
Which is great. And my personal experience of this is that actually, often you will find tenants who just renew year after year after year before they end up looking to buy something themselves, or but it's a product like this, a development like this, in the location it's in, it is going to be highly desirable, and so with that in mind, I think we'll see some fairly steady, good lengths of tenancies, I would think.
I think there'll be it will attract long-term tenants.
So just to finalize as well, just to take a step back, just to finish off is what I'm trying to say. It's a little bit about the brick as well, but perhaps you could again just talk about this.
I mean, here in the UK, I mean, obviously as a letting agency, we're very regulated. For instance, any tenant deposit. So typically speaking, we take a 5-week rental deposit on every tenancy to safeguard the condition of the property, etc. That has to be registered under a government scheme. We are part of My Deposit's custodial. We, as an agency, we obviously, as you can imagine, we collect a lot of rentals in and we pay a lot of rentals out. So again, we have to have full client money protect to ensure that we handle the funds correctly and you have total security as a tenant and a landlord on the monies. And again, we are obviously all affiliated with that. UCALA is our sort of governing body. There's several in the UK, 3 that you have to be one of, which again really sort of ensures that we have to, our terms and business ethics. And again, we're regulated as part of that, authorised within the sort of the FCA.
Yeah, very good. So I think with that in mind, we'll just go back to the questions, Phil, because they're still coming in, which is great. So please do feel free to keep sending them. So in terms of Ewan, to come back to your question with regard to valuations and for the mortgage lenders, for the banks, I think the update on that is we were hoping to get them in at the end of this month. Realistically, I think it's going to be a month delayed, so probably end of March, which the reason behind why we don't send, we don't encourage valuations to go in now, is that if they go in and they see an incomplete site, it increases the risk of them not valuing correctly, but it also potentially incurs more cost because they then have to go back to the site to check it again, a few weeks later. So we will, if you can please bear with us a little bit longer on that. We think it's going to be end of March as opposed to end of February, which is, I know, what we previously had communicated. Also, just to clarify with regards, Grace, again, another question from you. So Phil provides a management service. Just to be completely clear, Phil is also the guy who will be finding you the tenants. He will be marketing the property, sourcing the tenants, doing the viewings, bringing you an offer, and then once the tenant is in place, we'll be managing that. And the cost of that, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe is also included in that 10%.
Exactly that. Exactly. All the finding, the sourcing, and the tenant. Basically, we get involved as soon as you get the keys handed over to you. Yeah,
absolutely. And yeah, Nick, thank you for your note as well. We will, anybody that would, in fact, we will be reaching out to everybody with regard to setting up a meeting with Phil, because I do think it's something that is something, it's something that we should be putting in place now, so that, Phil can actually start the process of finding tenants for you, very, very shortly. We will also be communicating some information around the furniture pack. I would suggest, as a general rule, it is worth doing. However, there probably is room for 1 or 2 unfurnished flats in there as well. And yeah, I think that's all the questions we've answered. So, or that we've had in. So Phil, I think without further ado, we'll probably bring this session to a close. But thank you very much for your time, and hopefully everybody has found that very useful. Thank you very much to everybody who joined. Great to have you on. We will be sharing a copy of the presentation and also a copy of the recording of this if you want to put yourself through it again. And look forward to speaking to you all in the next few weeks. Thank you very much. Thank you, Phil.
Very much.
Cheers. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.